Today I'm going to show you how I use incredible makeup paired with a single hard light to create a dramatic black and white beauty image. Lindsay Adler here, and as a fashion and beauty photographer, one of the challenges of my job is to create lighting that adds to what the other artists have presented me instead of taking away. So what I mean by that is sometimes we as photographers, we get carried away. We light too much or get too creative and too dramatic, and sometimes it just doesn't fit with what the makeup looks like or the clothing looks like. And that's something I'm always struggling with, trying to figure out what best enhances this look, which best tells the story. So it was a creative play day. I was working with my makeup artist, and this is the look she presented me. These beautiful patterns and textures and lace and metal on the face. And so my thought process was, well, what best showed this off? What is the best approach? So I decided for this particular image, the direction that I wanted to go was something clean, timeless, black and white that just really showed the texture of the makeup. I didn't want to overpower it with any special effects. So let me take you behind the scenes and show you how this was achieved with one light and black and white toning. So let's begin with the main light on the subject. You can see it in the center of the frame, high above, and all it is a bare bulb. There's no modifier, which means it is a very, very hard light source. Now, the reason that I chose a hard light source and from such a high angle is because I wanted to play with shadows and I wanted to play with texture. By having a hard light source, what that does is it casts crisp shadows. So I knew that the lace on the face would actually create shadows and textures that I'd be able to see on her skin. And the reason that it's so high up is because it would cast longer shadows and create even more drama. So it would emphasize her cheekbones and it emphasize all of the lace that you see. Now, what you'll also see is on the far left-hand side and also behind the subject is you actually see another light. However, I ended up going with a tighter crop really close to the subject's face, so it became completely unnecessary. So let's talk about the gear that I'm using. I'm using a Canon 5D Mark IV, and I used a 70 to 200 millimeter lens. And I use it all the way at 200 millimeters to get that nice, really tight crop. So in other words, I used a light with no modifiers centered above the subject, a single light, to create a really dramatic result. It's actually pretty simple. But the magic, I think, for this image comes in the post-processing. So let me show you where I started. When I look at this photograph, I don't think it's overly exciting. The only thing that makes it really interesting happens to be the makeup, and the makeup is beautiful, but the lighting is relatively bland, the process isn't doing anything for me, and certainly the color is not adding anything to this photograph. So in my opinion, when the color is not adding anything, I know I'm going to want to go to black and white. So where I began at first was increasing the contrast, increasing the clarity a little bit. I went in and tried to make the photograph more dramatic, but I still didn't think color was really contributing anything. So what I did is I went to a very high contrast black and white. I really dragged those shadows to black. I really popped those highlights up towards white. Now you also see that there's some retouching in there. I went ahead and smoothed out the skin a little bit, and I also lifted up the eye on the left. It looked a little bit droopy because of the lighting. But one of the things you may notice as well is there are no catch lights. And this is one of the things you learn early on in photography is that catch lights are important, those little highlights in the eyes. But in this image, I actually didn't think it was necessary. You may agree or disagree. Let me know in the comments what you think. But in this photograph, it's not about the catch light to connect with the subject. It's about all of that amazing texture to the makeup. I actually think it makes her look a little bit more mysterious, maybe a little bit more like a dark queen wearing a mask. And so I decided that I didn't need the catch light. And part of the problem is that light was so high that in order to get a catch light, I'd have to actually lift her eyes up and then it would change the light. So that is what I ended up going with here. I think that it really shows the texture and the drama, and it creates a character. But if you look at the original photograph without the post-processing, it completely lacks the drama. So it is every step of the process that leads to the successful final image, from the makeup to the lighting, and then of course, to what I decide to do for the final grade, the final toning. So this is one interpretation of this photograph, a single light with high contrast black and white. But there are a million other interpretations I could take. And if you stay tuned, next week, I have a completely different interpretation of this look. In next week's setup, I use 3 lights and colored gels. So stay tuned because I'm looking forward to seeing which image you prefer. If you want to see the gear used specifically in the creation of this image, be sure to check out the links in the description. And be sure to stay tuned for next week to see my entirely different interpretation of this makeup. See you there.